Well, we have just started right up here. Welcome to the Jim Acosta Show on this Tuesday. Really glad to have the Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison on the program.
Hey, everybody.
Good to see you again, sir. It's been a while. And as you know, the political assassination that happened in Minnesota over the weekend, I mean, it's still raising all sorts of questions all over the country. In particular, compounding that tragedy is the disinformation that's swirling around the case.
Yeah.
And just to remind people what happened, the Democratic State Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette, they were wounded in a shooting near the home of former Democratic House Speaker Melissa Hortman, who was shot and killed along with her husband Mark. I suppose you probably know all of them
Very
from
well.
fairly well to all. Tell us about
I
it.
knew
Yeah,
I know them well. If you just allow me a second, Jim,
please.
I met Melissa Hortman before she was in the legislature and before I was in the state legislature. And we were both lawyers. I had a client. I was a director of something called the Legal Rights Center. She was with Legal Aid, which is sort of a civil oriented legal organization.
Yeah.
And she had a client who was the victim of racial discrimination, all kinds of bad stuff, sex harassment.
Yeah.
In fact, this landlord was a guy who said girls don't have to pay rent, kind of guy.
Interesting. Okay.
And she sued and she got a $400,000 verdict against that villain. And so that's how she and I met. Then we both went to the legislature. I went one term before she did. We were friends. We got to be better friends. And she was just a person who was rare in that you get a lot of people in politics who know how to, passionately advocate for their position. And you also have people who know how to negotiate with the other side. She actually could do both. And she was the speaker for a reason. She was the speaker because she could herd them cats.
Yeah,
you've been
of
around
course.
a lot of politics, Jim.
Yeah.
It's not easy getting all those folks together.
So
And
she wasn't a real partisan type, is what you're saying. It sounds. Yeah.
yeah. No, so yeah, she would bridge the partisan divide without ever giving up her sincerely held beliefs. She was in favor of a woman's rights to choose. She believed that all children had to have a meal if they were in school. You learn best on a full stomach. She believed in paid family medical leave for parents. She cared about that stuff. She was a Democrat, man. But that didn't make her an enemy of a Republican, right?
Interesting.
She stood on her ground and she said, okay, let's talk. We got a budget to pass. Let's do it. And she got her budget passed. And last session, she was 67. She told the other leader, a woman named Lisa Damath, you can be the speaker. I'll be the speaker emerita. And we are going to deal and negotiate. And they really did lead that caucus together. And they came up with a budget. And a lot of people didn't give them very good odds to come up with a budget, but they came up with it because they both had an eye toward working together. And that is to Melissa's great credit. And I just want to mention John Hoffman. He's survived, thank God. This guy is a passionate advocate for people with mental health problems, mental illness. He has, when people have been deemed to be mentally incompetent and they should, the state law says they should receive treatment right away, not just sit in jail. And John has really pounded the table and said, these people got to get direct care and treatment. You just can't let somebody with schizophrenia sit in the jail. The jail folks don't know how to deal with it. They're not trained to deal with it. And the person needs treatment. And so he's really been a great advocate for that and many other things. So these are two great people, and this is a great tragedy, and there's no two ways about it.
Yeah, no, there's no question about it, Mr. Attorney General. And the other thing is that this could have been far, far worse. If you look at according to what we know about the list that this guy had, just unreal.
Yeah. Cops did a good job. I mean, when they got the 911 call at John Hoffman's house, they were very heads up and said, you know what, this could be political. And they went to the other leaders in the vicinity, and that's when they actually encountered the shooter, who's now the defendant in this case. And so sadly, they didn't get there in time enough to save Melissa and Mark Hortman, but they were able to stop it right there.
Yeah.
And gather critical.
Thank goodness. And
Well,
and the other thing is the state of Minnesota has had to combat some of the disinformation swirling around the case. I
yeah,
saw the Minnesota Star Tribune newspaper ran this headline: "Fact check: Did suspect in the shootings have close ties to Governor Tim Walz?" Question mark. And the answer to that is, of course, no. But I mean, this is just really making this tragedy so much worse.
you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish that they would just stop and try to reflect on the fact that these are human beings with children, with families who gave it all they had to the people of our state. And so just to spin the lie machine is deeply, deeply insensitive. And I just think it goes to show that we all need to step back and chill out, you know?
Yeah.
And look, we get into politics because we believe in what we believe in. I'm not, a pro-life advocate. I'm a pro-choice person, but that doesn't need to make me an enemy of the person. That
Right.
that means we have a policy difference that we should discuss, debate, and then there's an election, and then the law prevails. But this idea that we're somehow enemies because we have different points of view, we have got to confront that and
Yeah.
quite seriously right away.
And how do you combat the problem with, I mean, disinformation in a situation like this? I saw Senator Mike Lee of Utah. This is according to the Hill. He's deleted social media posts that he made blaming the left for this assassination. And, as you probably saw, he put out one tweet over the weekend that said "Nightmare on Wall Street," another tweet that said,
Yeah,
"This is what happens when Marxists don't get their way." And of course, he ended up, I mean, this is completely the opposite of what occurred. Obviously, the guy was a Trump supporter who was targeting Democrats. According to the federal authorities, all Democrats were on that list.
right.
But I mean,
Well, and let me
how do you
just
deal with
say,
a situation like this? Yeah.
Jim, I'll never forget when I was in Congress, some guy showed up at the baseball practice of the
Right.
Republicans and shot Steve Scalise and others. Every Democrat was like, "Our hearts are with you, man. We're with you. We're praying for you. We're pulling for you."
Yeah.
And that's because we recognize each other's humanity. Mike Lee has sort of backtracked and he took it down. But I actually call upon the senator to actually apologize. I don't think it will diminish him in the eyes of anyone. It might be the thing that we need in this very moment to make a heartfelt apology and say, I just really let my, partisan impulses run ahead of my common sense. That kind of gesture might actually do a lot of good. Now, it takes a big person to do something like that. And I don't know if he's up to it, but that's what's needed. For him to make a blunder and insensitive comment like that, I'm all for forgiving him, but I
Yeah.
want to see him demonstrate some real contrition because I think this is an example of him just going too far, calling us Marxists and stuff like that. Look,
Yeah.
I know people who say they're Marxists. Fine, in America, you get to be a Marxist if you want to be one,
Sure.
but we're not Marxists. So what are
Yeah.
you talking about? We're
Yeah.
Democrats. We believe in markets and a public sector together. That's clear. Our philosophy is clear, and yet you want to call this name because you think it's a red meat for your base.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think that Senator Lee needs to make an apology, and I think that it would show a real character if he did. People screw up, but the real question
Sure.
now is, does he have the guts to say I was wrong?
No, I think that's a big part of this. And I remember covering you when you were in Congress, but it seems to me, Mr. Attorney General, that Congress has changed, that Washington has changed since you left Washington.
Yeah,
It's gotten
and
meaner, it's
I'm
gotten
sure.
nastier. What happened?
You know what? You look, and again, I am not trying to get partisan
Yeah,
because I'm not saying that I'm not partisan. I actually do have a set of values that I believe in. I
sure.
make no apologies for that. But I will say that I believe that so after 9/11, President Bush says we're not at war with Islam.
Yeah,
We're at war with some wicked killers who attacked our country, all of us, including Muslim Americans. And he went to a mosque and he said, "Look, I don't want to see any hate crimes." That's leadership right there. Now, look,
yeah,
how many things do I agree with that George Bush did? Not that many, quite frankly. I agree with PEPFAR, but there's a
yeah.
lot of things I didn't agree with. but he was a person who had basic human compassion. President Trump won't even call Tim Walz.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
He won't even call him. I mean, I'm like,
Yeah.
what kind of example are you setting? And I'm like, he doesn't seem to understand that Don is not calling Tim.
Yeah.
The president of the United States is calling the governor of the state of Minnesota, meaning on behalf of the people who I represent, the whole United States, please accept our condolences for this horrible tragedy, Mr. Governor. That's what leaders do.
Yeah.
What this guy is doing, I don't know what he's doing. The thing that is different between now and when I was in Congress is that, yes, tragedies have always happened in politics in America and everywhere in the world. But at least we had some leaders who at least would say, this is wrong, this is right, and I'm going to be a decent human being. I'll never forget Obama standing up and singing, Amazing Grace
Amazing
when
Grace. Yeah.
those people lost their family members in a horrible tragedy. I can't imagine Trump saying or doing anything like that.
Yeah.
And and it's I just don't relate to the guy on that level where he doesn't feel human compassion in the face of human suffering. That I will never quite understand, but I just hope that he changes. But I think if past is any indication of the future, I'm not holding out much hope for it.
Well, the other part of this, the other part of the equation is disinformation is such. It's a nightmare right now in this country. And I wonder how it affects your work as the Attorney General of Minnesota, because in this particular case, we have seen prominent MAGA figures, including the president's own son, Donald
Yeah.
Trump Jr., who said that the suspect seems to be a leftist. This is what he said, and a Democrat. That's all false, not true. But this stuff gets into the media, the social media ecosystem, the right-wing media ecosystem, and it just
Man,
spreads like wildfire. And
it sure does.
if you're a public figure, how do you deal with this? I mean, it's just out
Well,
of control all over the country right now.
I tell you, I think that the we've got to get. We had a law that
Hmm.
said that deep fakes were illegal, and now we got people who actually helped pass the law and voted for it, suing us to say it's unconstitutional because they have a right to, I don't know, lie. I mean, it is truly a problem. And honestly, Jim, I think that programs like yours and others where you come on and you say, wait a minute, that's not true. That's we need much more of that. You know what I mean? We need and we used to have a common news. I mean, when Cronkite and all
Yeah,
those guys were on, we all watched, three channels, right? ABC, NBC,
true.
CBS. But now there's a massive proliferation and you get to have your own version of reality. But what about basic human decency? I
Yeah,
think we can call each other back to that. We can call each other back to that, and we ought to say to the president, Mr. President, you're wrong for not calling the governor. You should call the governor. You don't even I tell you this, Pam Bondi called me and said, "Man, I'm sorry about this. This is horrible."
really, she did. Okay,
I'll give her credit for it. I
yeah,
mean, she and
sure,
I disagree on nearly everything, but at least she didn't forget her humanity like that. I don't expect her to change any position that she has, but at least she got that part of it. And so that is really a real challenge of our age. We need to use legislative tools. I mean, we still got to use defamation lawsuits. I mean, look, Mike Lindell, I guess a jury in Colorado just came down today saying that he defamed the people at Dominion, the voting machine
right,
folk. So hopefully he'll get himself together and stop making up stories. I mean, Fox News, they had to settle a case for $789 million, and
right.
they toned down a little bit, but they're still kind of bad, with the making up stuff. And so, I mean, we've got to use our laws that protect people's reputational interest. I mean, and we know Alex Jones has got a big judgment against him, and so these liars. Here's the thing:
Yeah,
all these liars, they have an allyship of liars, have all been sued for large amounts of money.
yeah.
And we the public has got to get on to the fact that these people really are not telling you the truth and are trying to use you and manipulate you.
Yeah, I mean,
And
if the disinformation gets that bad surrounding this case, I mean, could you take legal action of some sort? I suppose it depends on the situation, but as the Attorney General, I
yeah,
suppose that would be in your wheelhouse, I guess.
yeah, it would depend on what it was. I mean, if there was if there was it sort of would depend, but let me tell you, I got people watching this And one of the reasons I've appeared on the news quite a lot about after this is because I want to try to get the real story out.
Yeah.
I think that our U.S. attorney, our local U.S. attorney, told kind of the narrative as to what the government thinks it can show. That I think was helpful. And it's a battle. But I'll
Yeah.
just say this, man. Over the course of American history, there was a guy named Preston Brooks
Hmm.
who beat a U.S. senator with a cane, and when he broke the cane, people mailed him canes because this pro-slavery representative beat this anti-slavery senator. And
Yeah.
so we can't get up here and say that this is new. Ugly, violent behavior has been a part of American politics for a long time.
Yeah.
Several presidents have been assassinated in the 60s. You had JFK, RFK, MLK.
Sure.
You had Medgar Evers, Malcolm X. So we've been through tough times, folks, but we at least have to expect that our leaders are going to try to
Well,
call us to higher ground.
it,
And
I
people like yourself are doing a good job at that.
no, I appreciate that, and that's what is so troubling and disappointing and maddening, quite frankly, about Donald Trump not even wanting to call the governor of Minnesota. Donald Trump was the subject of an assassination attempt, almost two assassination attempts. I mean, there was a second plot that was foiled by the police, stopped by the police. So one would think he would have sympathy in this area
You would
and
think
just
so.
automatically pick up the phone and say, hey, I been there. I
Been
know.
there.
Yeah. But he
Yeah.
doesn't do it, even in this case, even in this kind of case.
It sort of boggles the mind.
Yeah.
It really does. And so here's the thing. Look, 25,000 people showed up in Minnesota on Saturday in the face of an unspeakable tragedy because they wanted to be together, because they want to lift up the best ideals of our nation, because they believe due process, freedom of the press are important. They believe that we should have a multiracial democracy, that it's okay to be a trans person or an immigrant, and that we should not villainize people because of this. And so I'm confident that America is going to rise to the occasion. I just don't think that this president's going to rise to the occasion. If he does, let me tell you, I'd be the first one to be surprised. And I'll come on your show and say that I'm sorry. But I think I'm safe in saying that Trump has
Yeah.
already shown us who he is, so we should believe him.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. And I guess just finally, how does Minnesota get through this? I mean, I see
Together,
the
together,
governor's shown a lot of leadership. Yeah.
we hold hands and we just tell each other that we appreciate each other, that we remember each other. I can tell you that local Republicans have not been insensitive. I mean, there's a few who have made public statements, and I mean, I was proud of the speaker, Republican speaker Lisa Damuth, who's made very kind comments about
Mm.
Melissa Hortman, and others have done the same. And so I think that at least locally, we're hanging together, and we're going to continue to do that, remembering that sadly communities go through hard times. I'll never forget my friends in Connecticut, when they had 27 children shot down, or when my good friend Gabby Giffords was shot down in Arizona. I mean, these tragedies happen. We do all we can to prevent them, but how do we make it through? We hold hands, we hug each other, and we keep on marching. And we're not going to quit. We're going to
Yeah.
keep it up.
Yeah. Well, the whole country could use some of that Minnesota nice. That's for sure. It's
Yeah,
not, it's
it's
not
what's
such a,
been hanging up. It's what's been keeping us afloat, man.
yeah,
I mean, people
that's good.
joke about Minnesota and Minnesota nice, but that spirit of civility, which really is a true thing that we do around here, is
Yeah.
helping get through a tough moment.
That's excellent. I'm glad to hear it. And, I've got a whole lot of viewers right now who are sending their hearts out to you and everybody else in the state government there. I'm very sorry about what's happened, but wanted to reach out to you and really glad you came on. Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim, and glad to see you on the Substack. It's a great show you got there.
All right. Appreciate it. We'll do it again soon. Thanks again,
Oh,
sir.
yeah.